inspires me because they're able to connect us all with great stories about how the world can be transformed through the power of sharing.
So Shareable really opened up my world to stuff that was happening everywhere, where I thought, oh, these are some good ideas and they're just happening here. Suddenly, Australia, Paris, Toronto, China, like everywhere, people are doing different kinds of sharing initiatives. And Shareable has just been really influential in that way. And it's also when I start talking to other people, when I'm spreading the word, when I'm evangelizing, Shareable is one of the best places to say, just go hit this website. It'll blow your mind. You'll find all other kinds of stuff there, and it'll launch you to whatever you want to do, whatever themes you want to follow. So Shareable needs to be here.
I love Shareable because it gives me a window into the world, into the sharing economy, which then is more broadly about the future of business and the future world that we're seeking to create and to live in. Shareable focuses a lot on the community building aspect, and not just on the website, but in terms of the conferences it hosts and the communities that it nurtures. So it's not just what's happening online, it's also what's offline, and it's the fact that Shareable is a container that can hold it all.
So the coolest thing that happened to me on Shareable is that I won second prize in their storytelling competition and was given $100 to spend in the sharing economy. And I chose to put that $100 to my friend Kaganga John, who is a farmer in Uganda, towards his global giving campaign that he was running to build an internet center in his village.
Shareable teaches us something that we should already know, but most of us maybe have forgotten in the business world, which is that sharing is not only important, but also a sustainable and profitable way of doing business.
So Shareable inspires me because of the people who create it. It is one of the only places online for writers and entrepreneurs and consumers to come together, and people who share a common vision, who believe that access trumps ownership and that value unused is waste.
So what inspires me about Shareable is as we write these stories, what's becoming really clear about sharing and sharing economy is that kind of new relationship between people, a peer-based relationship.
First time on the program, I really appreciate that you agreed to the invitation and came on, and I'm hoping there's so much to talk about, as you probably realized during our conversation pre-show, that we can probably just talk forever about this topic. And so I was really curious to find out how you started Shareable, because it just seemed like something that should have been around like 100 years, but I know it hasn't been around for that long.
I know, right? It's like
it should have been
a magazine online magazine or nonprofit about sharing, right?
Sharing. It makes sense to me.
Like there should have been something around.
A long time ago.
My journey to it, we launched in 2009, and I have a background in corporate strategy, but I wanted to really do something different in my life, and take all that knowledge I learned in the corporate world and apply it to the civic space, because I saw there was so much opportunity to do good, and that there was also a need to really change the way we do things and the way we think about how to manage our world. And this was back in 2008 when we were exploring this idea, me and some friends, and everyone in San Francisco was talking about, sustainable this and solar panels and Priuses, and I was just, my question was, well, what about sharing? It doesn't really cost hardly anything, and you could save resources and address poverty,
Right.
and so one thing led to another. I met up with Free Range Graphics. They had a foundation they were doing some work with, the Shift Foundation, and we kind of wanted to do the same thing, which is start a sharing movement. But, the interesting thing that we found when we started doing our research in 2008 is that we didn't need to start a sharing movement. There was one bubbling beneath the surface, and also a very large movement, and also old in some ways, and that we just needed to shine a light on it. So it was both that we were unconscious of a whole side of our economy that existed, that operates in sharing and solidarity, and it was also that what was happening at that time with the economic crisis and also new technologies, particularly mobile, taking off, is that there was a new opportunity to share and scale that using technology. So we launched Shareable, and in October 2009, it really took off.
That's great. I mean, I think, the other interesting thing is it seemed like there's always amazing things coming out of San Francisco. I'm a little jealous about that. I think a lot of great things happen in Boston and Cambridge, but it's like there's so many amazing sort of global movement and very sort of action-oriented companies and organizations that seem to happen in San Francisco. So I don't know if you have any thoughts in terms of why do you think there is such a, I don't know, it's almost like a groundswell of that type of initiatives in that city.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco definitely has that reputation, and this goes back a long way in the history as kind of a freewheeling coastal frontier town and a boom town, right? And also the history of Silicon Valley is not just like from the 50s or the 60s on. It's like a century of development starting with radio technologies, and that has built up over time. So, yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question, but I don't like to, when people say that San Francisco is like the center of the sharing economy or there's so many innovative things happening, when we write at Shareable, we see every community has their own spin and way of doing things and something to contribute to the global sharing movement. And so, for instance, take Paris. You don't normally associate like sharing with Paris, but they really catalyzed the global bike sharing boom because of the VLib system there. It was the first commercial system to really have success and have a kind of business model and use all the new technologies. And sort of set a new pattern that other cities around the world have followed. We're just getting bike sharing in San Francisco now, 5-6 years later. I think VLib started in 2007. And then they also have this amazing car sharing system, AutoLead, and they use an electric car made specifically to be shared for a car sharing system. So it's an electric, very simple, stripped down, but highly reliable car for car sharing. So there's an example of a city that maybe not get the attention, but is doing something equally important or at least significant in the world, in the sharing world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great because even countries we wouldn't even think about, like I saw a video on the website on Colombia in terms of how they were creating green spaces for pedestrian, but also for cyclists to use. And it's such a juxtaposition when I was looking, because there's one side of the town where it's so poor. It's like the road is not even paved. And then you look on the other side and you see all this, green park, and people are able to sort of navigate the road on bikes and on foot and be able to sort of use the environment comfortably. I just thought that was interesting because a lot of time I know people will use money or lack of resources or thinking countries with more will do more or will share more, but it's not always the case. It seems like we can share across the board regardless of our assets.
Yeah, exactly. In the United States, it's like our vision of a sharing city is one powered by high technology and big data, and with everything is has a chip in it, and you can track it, and that makes you theoretically able to share assets better and use resources more efficiently, right? Yeah. This is kind of IBM idea of a city, right? But like Bogota, Colombia, there is a different kind of development model that you can use, which is low tech, low carbon, and inexpensive, and that is to focus on on building the commons, schools, parks, and public transportation, and stuff like all those the intensive network of bicycle paths they have in Bogota. And I think that's a really powerful model that more cities in the developed world should follow, because it's highly successful. Bogota, before the Peñalosa and other like progressive mayors got involved, was a really scary place to live. Very low morale, high crime, and then taking this kind of commons-based development paradigm, they turned the city around and made it into something that people really love and feel at home in, right? That they feel part of, right? And part of the calculation there was, they just, Enrique Peñalosa, I mean, he talks about this. They didn't really have the choice to be competitive with developed nations, and develop that way, become leading economies or whatever. So like, well, we're going to do something different. We're going to design a city for high quality of life, right? Where everyone's included. And so instead of like developing for, to say, 30% of people that own cars in Bogota, there's like, well, there's 70% of people that could ride bikes or walk. Let's design the city for them, right? So this is a kind of different calculation.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that, I thought that was so interesting because in both Cambridge and Boston, we have local elections going on for city council, for mayor, and it's so interesting. Like they talk about economic development, talk about education, unions, and so many things in terms of making the city. I mean, of course, we talk about unity, but it's amazing to me sharing doesn't come up at all in terms of how do we sort of like get our resources together. Even one city at a time. Like it doesn't come up at all in any form, any debate whatsoever. Does that
Right.
come up where you are at all with politicians?
Yeah, I mean, this is starting to change, I think, slowly in just a few places. But for instance, in San Francisco, Shareable helped Mayor Ed Lee launch the Sharing Economy Working Group to create sharing friendly policies, and to promote and to promote sharing in some ways, and then Seoul, Korea, Mayor Park of Seoul, Korea was inspired by that, and so they started, I think, an even more ambitious Sharing Cities initiative, and he has a whole kind of platform that he's put together, a whole program of actions, and supporting startups, doing public events, promoting that. And here's the thing: what's interesting about what's happening in Seoul. Part of the motivation for Mayor Park is that they have the highest suicide rate in the top 30 OECD countries.
Oh my
right?
God.
And he sees this as a way to save resources and provide services for more people, but also weave the community back together. That their society, they've been sort of rocketed into the global economy, and there's a sort of clash of traditional values and our Western ideas about the economy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to be able to sort of learn from different part of the world, because we can learn so much. And I think a lot of time, you practically just banging your head against the wall trying to come up with solutions. A lot of time it's because you are in that situation, then sometimes the solution kind of come to you because there is a need, versus
Right.
other places are doing it where we can either sort of modify or model what they're doing instead of, we don't have to reinvent the wheels necessarily, because when it comes to sharing, I think we can easily sort of learn from our sister cities and countries.
That is so true. It's like crazy true, and that's what
Yeah.
we're finding. It's like take jobs, right? Like this is a huge issue in the United States and around the world, right? Well, Mondragon, Spain. It's in the Basque region of Spain. It's there is the co-op there, Mondragon. It's very famous, and it employs like 80,000 people. That area of Spain, the Basque Country, 60% of the economy is cooperative, meaning that the workers own and manage the enterprises themselves in a democratic fashion, right? And you know, in the town of Mondragon, everyone is middle class. Everyone, because the whole purpose of Mondragon, the cooperative, is not to create profits; it's to create jobs. So their goal is they're a social enterprise. Like, we want to make sure everyone has work. That's why we're here. This is a completely different mentality than the typical mayor or politician would how they think about business, right? And so you could take that same mentality. And Mondragon, Spain, is just one area. There's also a region in Italy where 30% of the economy is all cooperatives. And you can take that model and apply it, and instead of like giving tax breaks and subsidies for big companies to come who then leave 10 years later, build from the bottom up a cooperative economy that pays well and the businesses never leave. And so this is one of the things that we advocate for, and put in a policy paper we just published called Policies for Shareable Cities. So we definitely have Maria. We definitely have a lot to learn from in the United States from other parts of the world.
So I know you had an IMAP event that just ended. I just learned about it, of course, the moment it finished, and so I think it ended at the end of October. And I was like, oh my God, there was something in Boston. I think there was a host in Boston I didn't know about. So can you share a little bit about what took place during that period?
Yeah. So what we did. About a month ago, we launched our Sharing Cities network. So the idea of this is to simply connect people within cities, sharing projects and sharers in the sharing community in as many cities as possible, and then also connect cities to one another and create a kind of innovation network, a sharing innovation network, and spread these ideas, right? And catalyze new projects and move the sharing movement forward, you know, community, one community at a time, you know, but all together. And to kind of kick off the network, we did what we called a map jam. And it's really simple. It's like a small group of people get together and their community and map all the shared assets and sharing enterprises and services in their community, the car sharing, the bicycle sharing, the seed library, the tool library, the bike kitchen, the food pantry, the libraries, the parks, all the things that we share. And about 60 cities, 60 groups in 60 cities signed up to map. And now we have this amazing collection and data set of maps. But the cool thing is, Maria, is how this really raises people's consciousness about their own power and the assets that they have in the community. And, you know, me included, even though I've been doing this for 4 years and writing about sharing and publishing Shareable, I mapped Mountain View, and I had the same experience I think that many people in this action had, is that I realized there was a lot more to share in my community than I knew about.
Yeah.
That there was a time bank I didn't know about, that we had five credit unions in Mountain View alone.
Oh.
It was really eye-opening, and that was happening across these map jams.
I think it's great. I see one coming up in Toronto on November 11th, next Monday. So I thought it ended, but it's great because I think most of these hosts will probably continue meeting in their respective city. Is that right? Or country? Yeah,
so what happened is this thing really took off, so we kind of informally extended the deadline. So if anyone's listening and they want to map their community, I mean, by all means, get in touch. Go to shareable.net, and we have a post on there how to host a map jam, and go do it. That would be great, and we'll help you promote and run your map jam, and tweet about it and so forth. And you can join the conversation at our Sharing Cities network Facebook group. So we'll probably have about 20 of the ones that are scheduled will happen after our deadline. So this is great. Keep going. We don't want to stop it. People want to do it.
Yeah, because I saw that.
Yeah, and then the longer term thing, like where you're getting at, Maria, is this is the first step in building a local sharing network. Is first, hey, let's see what's here, and then let's bring all those people together from those different sharing services and assets in the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. And then I was looking at your upcoming event. There's so much going on. When I'm on that website, I could be on there all day long because you read the stories. And I mentioned to you, like, I'm very interested in car sharing. Although I've never, Lyft is the one that people talk about the most. And of course, you can't miss it with the pink mustache.
Yeah, right.
In the city, it's like you see it, and it's like it's funny because I think part of sharing, there's a level of happiness that comes with what you discover. And I don't know what it is about that pink mustache. Like every time I see it, although I've never been in a car, like I can't help but laugh. Like it's ridiculous. Like I just cannot believe who came up with this concept. It's just like unreal to me. But you get all these ideas, but I think a lot of time you do come and you start butting heads, I think, with corporations or with some cities, because not everyone is going to embrace that concept. Like I know we have some companies who are not necessarily ride sharing, like Lyft with regular people, but some cities have resisted because they're so used to, okay, you're supposed to take buses and taxis and trains, and this is what's available. And anything else seems to become almost like a threat because it doesn't fit the model of whatever's already in place.
Yeah, exactly. The lesson that I learned from we did our 40, like I mentioned before, we did a 40-page guide, policies for sharing cities. What we learned is that any kind of community enterprise that is democratically owned, that has sort of a lateral structure, is disadvantaged in the regulatory regime. So it's the regulations and the way to finance businesses that are very tightly held private corporations, the skids have really been greased. It's super easy relative to something that is very democratic or kind of networked. Our economy is optimized for centralizing decision making and wealth, and for top-down provision of our services. So anytime you have kind of a lateral or bottom-up solution, you're bumping up against the status quo from a legal and regulatory perspective. And it's also really, for instance, the case of ride sharing, it's really new. It's not so cut and dried like that, whether it's good or bad, right? It's generally positive socially because you really are bringing people together. But for instance, there's questions about taxation and worker protections. Right. It raises those kinds of issues as well.
And safety of both the drivers and the people riding as well, because people are always raising question about safety and do they have insurance, and those are valid questions. But also, it's great that some people have been brave enough to use the services. And also it's good to hear the stories of the individuals who choose to become drivers, because a lot of time, again, it's because of need. It has nothing to do with greed or I just want to make more money, but also to help others, because I'm sure they were in a situation where it's like they didn't have enough money to pay, let's say, for a taxi, or some people may not even have enough money to pay for a bus or a train, but someone is willing to give them a ride to work. And so they thought, why not share my car? Because it could just be sitting there because you can't park it depending on where you live. I'm sure in San Francisco, trying to find a parking space, it's like, a project, if you're going somewhere and you're in a hurry versus someone giving you a ride and dropping you off somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides to the coin, which is, on the one hand, this can be very empowering for someone that already has a car and they need to generate extra income and do it in their spare time or in a flexible way, right? Right. On the other hand, if you are taking jobs and tax money away from the city, and there's those taxi drivers, they may not own a car. This may be the only kind of job or part of a limited set of options they have for employment. And if that's eroded, so then people in even worse, sort of economic situations may be impacted negatively. So right. It's kind of a mixed picture, and we have to, and cities are trying to walk the line so that on the one hand that the new innovation and choice is accommodated, and that there are proper safety and tax, et cetera, things placed on real-time ride sharing. On the other hand, not to erode the job base for taxi drivers and
Right.
and erode the tax base either for the city.
Yeah.
So it's there's two sides to the coin that we have to look at.
Yeah, there's so much to, and that's why it's great to have Shareable as a resource, because you can go on there, read the articles, read the report, hear from other people. And so let's remind people where to go for more information if they want to join Shareable or find out what's coming up before the end of the year.
Yeah, so go to shareable.net and join our newsletter to keep. It's a weekly newsletter. We're on Twitter at Shareable. That's our handle, and you can follow us there. And we really encourage people to read and share our content. And then the thing to really check out now is if any of this is like making sense or kind of sounds exciting, like join our Sharing Cities Network Facebook group.
Oh, great.
And especially if you're a kind of project leader or sharing leader in your community, please come and join the other project leaders that are we're gathering there. There are about 500 now. We just kicked it off in like the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I think that's awesome, and that's gonna be our time for today. I want to thank you for being on the show. I'm hoping you'll come back. Other members from Shareable will come back.
I'd love to. Thank you, Marie, for having me. It was great to chat. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, and have a shareable week.